First item is public comment. Kathy, what do you have for us this week?
Just three things to bring everybody up to date. So the Wildcat Sports Group is ready for softball at the Marble Street Playground. The seniors, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are practicing tonight, and the juniors, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders are practicing tomorrow. The first home games are on Monday, May 6th, and Tuesday, May 7th at 5:30. Spectators, please use the parking lot of the playground. We had that put in last year. I'm hoping to not have all the cars parked on the side of the street. Makes for unpleasantries and trying to get traffic through. Also, Seth Jennings from Berkshire Regional Planning Commission has submitted the open space and recreation plan to Melissa Crean for state input. Once that is completed, the town will be eligible to apply for the park grant, which, if approved, pays 55% of playground costs, leaving the town with 45%, of which the Lee Youth Commission will apply for CPA funding to help defray that cost. And one more thing, there is going to be a site visit tomorrow with Alex Katz for the potential Ninja Playground project. They'll be at the Lee Athletic Field at 11 o'clock. If you're around and want to know what's happening with that project, please join us for that visit.
What is the Ninja Playground project?
It's, we have put in for the CPA monies to put a project. I don't know that much about it. Josh is the coordinator for that, but it'll be at the back of the athletic field. And what it is different, I shouldn't say Olympic size, but like
workout stations?
Type of thing,
Okay.
but it's more for young people. We
Doesn't
don't-
involve hitting people.
No,
Oh.
hitting people. And we've already have approval from the Conservation Commission with the type of padding we need to put down to put the equipment in. So,
Something like an obstacle course?
yeah,
thing?
Yeah, that's great.
Couldn't even qualify for the
We're
Ninja
excited.
Turtles.
Yeah.
no, we can't play.
You might. We'd all break something.
I'm long past qualified for Ninja Playgrounds.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Yeah. No, I know. Go ahead. Yeah.
next up, any other comments? No? All right. Moving on, we have a few minutes. First off, the April 8th minutes.
Anything wrong with it? I'd like to approve, as written.
Okay. Is there a second?
Sure. I'll second.
Seconds, any further discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call vote. Conrad?
Aye.
Peg?
Hi.
Dave?
Aye.
Peter?
Abstain because I was absent.
Gotcha. Buck Donovan, aye. Then we got long meeting we had on the 16th.
Move approval as printed.
Second.
Conrad seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call. Conrad?
Aye.
Peg?
Hi.
Dave?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Buck Donovan, aye. Next one on the agenda, it came up at one of our, I think on April 8th. We had a special permit in here for an residential home in an industrial setting. In our narrative section of the bylaws, it gives a provision for it. And I'm surprised this didn't get caught in that consultant we did with the code 360. But then Conrad picked up, if you go to our dimensional tables in the footnotes, it says in the industrial zone, I can't remember, I'm trying to
Number 5.
footnote 5. no residential shall be permitted. And, it looks, I think this was in here and then there was a change in the uses to give the provision of a special permit by special permit, and this never really got taken out. So I was wondering, first off, we'll note this and probably our next round of town meeting stuff will change it. But if we, feel free, if you're going through and notice any other discrepancies like this, let's try to get them cleaned up. I thought, remember,
It's trouble.
here's more, he's got more of them for us, I bet.
Yes, I do, sir.
Good, great.
Can I come forward?
Go ahead,
All
sir.
right, well, there's no speaker out here, do you mind if I
Come right up here. Yep.
I don't mean to interrupt what you guys are doing here.
No, this is what we're doing.
I know. Well, I was just, have a couple of comments on some things I noted. Thank you. If you go to the first of the table, I think it's the one on multifamily. So it's, table 2 of 2.
Yeah.
If you notice, footnote number 1 is on residential R20 and R30s and RA districts, and also on rural business. If you look at footnote number 1, it says not more than one building may be placed on a lot. However, we probably will be having an ADU
Yep.
bylaw, so I think you need to, I'm just suggesting that the board needs to look at this. Whether you want to say unless it's an ADU, or if you just want to strike it. You know, or you just need to, I think we need to rethink the way that particular exception is because of the ADU bylaw. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Also,
I don't know if you could really have it. I don't remember if you can have an ADU with, on a lot with a multiple dwelling.
I don't know. I'm just saying we need to look and see, because we're gonna have a similar thing
No.
in another, on another.
Don't believe.
And that's fine. If it's applicable to multiple family, that's fine. Also, do we still have an RM zone? Residential multiple dwelling? I thought we got rid of that, so it might be an idea to scratch that, because it used to be just as you went over the railroad tracks on the right, you know, and left, it was just a small, very small, the only place in
Is it-
town
Was it
that it was rural,
business multiple? We,
business multiple BM, we need to look at both of those.
Yeah.
And see if they're still applicable. I'm not sure they are. And also the NR, for residential multiple and business multiple. And down rural business on adequate square footage, any place where it says NR, it's footnote 2. If you look at footnote 2, NR indicates that there are no fixed dimensional requirements. It just, so what does that mean to the board? Does that mean that a special permit granting authority can let them go to the lot line? Does it mean, you know, what does it mean to you folks? I'm just saying,
There's a minimum yard dimensions.
well, according to this, there's no fixed dimensional requirements on multifamily.
as far as dwelling units per acre, not set.
Right, and the number of units. Well, true. And there are some setback requirements, you're right.
There's still set.
But it's a matter of, is that what you want? In fact, I would suggest that forgetting these tables for a minute, but there is another place in the bylaw where it says that the Board of Selectmen can issue multiple dwelling unit, but with no more than 4 units. Do we really want to keep that? Especially with the state about to come out with some mandatory zoning requirements
No, footnote 2,
you're in the wrong one. It's the
No.
other, it's the other
we
one.
didn't, we
Sorry.
don't have it in here.
Oh, sorry.
At the bottom.
Oh, at the bottom?
Yeah, at the
Okay,
bottom.
got
Oh,
it.
you fit it
Alright.
in that
Oh,
way.
I thought it was one.
Yeah, it's just, I thought we should
No,
think
okay.
about it. And footnote number 3, conversions, I went and looked that up. That section will be permitted as long as the conversion does not increase nonconformity of the existing structure. That's in the DCBC zone. And I think it was by special permit, but variances, if they can meet the requirements of the variance, are always going to be able to give a variance to nonconformities. Like you guys have already issued permits where you allow things to be more nonconforming, which in my mind should have been a special permit view, but a variance finding.
Mhm.
When you create new, not sliding along them, but when you get closer to your boundary, I don't believe that's within your rights, but that's my personal opinion. That it would need maybe two special hearings, one through you guys and one through the ZBA for a variance. The landscape buffer also footnote 4. And footnote 4,
Yeah,
because if you look at the main table, multiple dwellings, I couldn't find a footnote 4. I couldn't find one on the table.
oh,
There is a footnote 4, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not on the sheet.
Right, well, it's on the bottom. Well, I have one, and this was supposedly the last one that was printed October 2022. So maybe that could be. Anyway, I think that if you're looking, because I think your minutes or your agenda just said you were gonna look at footnotes. So
Yeah,
assuming
yeah.
we can look at all this,
oh, yeah.
that I'm not violating anything. So I think you need to look and say, this is probably isn't appropriate on this particular table, where it may be on the other table, which I'm gonna get to in a minute. Also, if you look on multiple families, if you look down Office Park and Light Industrial, not permitted, but you have footnote 8. There is no footnote 8 on this particular table.
Mhm.
Just things to consider.
Gordon, can I ask you a
Yes, sir.
question? On this code 360, I remember going through all these tables with them. There's no changes that have been made to the tables?
I believe this is the way they've been printed forever. I don't know, I don't actually remember going through the footnotes with participating in that with this 360 group.
I'm pretty sure we never got any comment from them about.
That could be.
On the
fixing
table.
footnotes.
No,
Well,
We
maybe
got a lot of
they,
Comments, but nothing I
Okay.
remember about footnotes.
it was more so the whole text all the way
Right.
through.
the only other thing I have a question on multiple family is in floodplain district, FP, not permitted. The floodplain is an overlay district. And as long as it goes through conservation and meets the requirements of the state's building code for building in the floodplain, I'm just wondering why we're saying, it's just a question. Why aren't we allowing multiple dwellings in a floodplain area as long as it meets conservation and the height of all the utilities above the floodplain and, all that, and 2 feet above base flood and all that kind of stuff? Is it a problem? It may be, but that's something maybe the master plan would want to look like, and I apologize for not being prepped on this tonight, but does the master plan encourage residential dwellings? Like I'm thinking the Price Chopper property. Well, that's in the floodplain. I mean, we can't have multiple family there. Because it's in the floodplain. Even if it goes through special
Yeah.
permits and all that doesn't make any sense to me. And it
Mhm.
looks, in fact, problematic to not allow it there. And also in the industrial district, we also have overlays where what's happening right up at the Eagle Mill. We're having multiple dwellings up there. So maybe you should restructure and think about, well, maybe the footnote should say, unless it's approved as an overlay in accordance with this particular part. I just think we need to look a little deeper at these and coordinate it a little better. On your first table, I had some questions. Number one, I'm going to go back to something I always harp on, which is definitions. You have maximum building height as a heading, but when you look up building height, or even staying in this table, what is 2.5 stories? What's a half story? There's no definition for a half story. The building code doesn't deal with half stories. So if you're looking at your zoning enforcement person to say, hey, is that a half story? They're not gonna even be able to go to the building code to say, well, this is what a half story is. And also building height is measured differently here. So I'll get back over to that in a minute. If we look first at the R30 and R40 zones. You have,
Gordon, could we just
Yes, sir.
delete the stories altogether? and
Well,
not loss of anything?
I don't know that you want to delete it entirely. But I think this is all done in 1972, and I'm gonna tell you about one of your table footnotes that is so outdated, it just needs to get removed, and you need to different. But I was gonna get to that in a minute if you don't mind. But I went through each one of the footnotes to see, well, how realistic, where is it? Does it make sense? I noticed that between R20 and RA, you have a footnote 3 and a footnote 2, and I didn't understand the difference and in fact, the area for 2-family, you have under residential R20, you have a footnote 2.
Mhm.
And then for a 2-family, but not for which is funny. What it does is if you go to footnote 3, you might as well look at it, which makes sense. If you have water and sewer, town water and town sewer, you get to reduce your square footage by 50% of your lot size, which really means footnote 2 for a 2-family 40, it really brings it back to if you have an R20 with minimum acreage of 20,000 square feet, then you could go ahead and have a 2-family there by right. That's really what it does. You follow? If you have a 2-family,
It would be 40,000, but for that footnote.
but the footnote says, oh, wait, no, you can actually go down to 20,000.
And you can leave this only water and sewer.
Only with water and sewer. No, I'm not saying take it away. I'm saying let's appreciate what our footnotes are doing for us. And let's understand what the footnotes are doing. Because as you see in R30, there's footnote 3 in the square footage area. So when you go look at it, it says minimum lot size shown in the table may be reduced to 20,000 if served by town water and sewer. So it looks to me like the intent is, and when you look at the other footnote, never to go below 20,000 square feet, which is basically just shy of a half an acre. So I get that. So I was trying to see, does this make sense? And I think that probably wouldn't be a problem. I don't know that footnote 1 really matters anymore. It's all of it. It's when you have a subdivision with with property on like a cul-de-sac or a major curve, then you get 80% of your frontage. I don't think that's problematic. We've done that on many subdivisions, especially when they put a cul-de-sac because they're going to go further.
Mhm.
You've allowed 80%, and
Yeah.
I don't think that's problematic.
So just remove it.
No, unless you're gonna make it a note where it's applicable to everything. Cause right now it is. Number one, I don't care what your frontage is or what industrial zone. And again, floodplain, I don't get that. Why we've got 5 acres minimum in a floodplain and you need 200 feet of front. Why? It's an overlay district. Floodplain. I don't know why it's listed out separately like this. It's like it's its own zoning district, but it's not. It's an overlay district
Conflicts with.
with a
everything-
lot,
Everything that's in a flood.
everything.
Also in another zone.
Right,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what are you gonna do? So to me, that should just be stricken. The whole floodplain thing on both charts. As you look at the OPLI. In your footnotes at OPLI, you have footnote 9 and footnote 10 for the most part. And I thought it kind of made sense. I get it. And actually footnote 8, 9, and 10 are all about OPLI. And I think that it's not as clear as it could be. But footnote 8 which is your should probably be also on top of, the area and square footage, the 2 acres. Like Office Park Light Industrial, it says 2 acres. Well, it really isn't. That's an individual lot inside OPLI. OPLI requires 10 acres of land. Well, you don't know that until you go to the footnote. It should almost be like the other way around with both
every-
footnotes. So the
Every
office
parcel
park,
inside there is. 10?
every parcel has to be 2 acres.
Two, yes,
But the park, if you want to develop a park
has to
somewhere,
be 10.
has to be 10
Yeah.
acres. So you basically could, if you carved it up carefully, you could have 5 lots,
Mhm.
an OPLI lot. But I don't think it's clear on how you get there. Anyway, it's just, it's a matter of reviewing it for clarity. What was footnote 12? Oh, footnote 11. Footnote 11 was put in error really, and it only shows up in Office Park Light Industrial. And was there one other place? I think that was it, about building height. 35 feet, and notice that it's not limited in stories, just in height, which is smart, I think. Because you can only pack so many stories into any given height.
Mhm.
Because of ceiling height requirements and whatnot in the code, and then the interstitial space of your joists and whatnot. So there's, if you limit it at 35 feet, you don't need to say 2.5 stories. It's gonna be limited, because you can't put 4 stories in a 35-foot building. It's impossible.
There's no stories shown in LPLI.
Right, but I'm talking the whole column of stories is kind of like what uses it in this way? And also you have a conflicting area where you talk, if you go to the definition of a basement, they talk about whether it's a story above grade. Well, the building code takes care of all that, and it conflicts with your definition, so the building code would win. And it's just like, I am not so sure. I mean, state regulation is gonna supersede this. I can show you the section of the general law that'll tell you that. But I think that the whole thing about this 2.5 story thing. But my problem with number 11, footnote number 11 was it's antiquated. It says, except it can be 45 feet or 3 stories where a sprinkler system is designed to satisfaction of leaf fire. Leaf fire chief has nothing to do with approving sprinkler systems. It's a total building code issue. So if you want to rewrite that to say as long as it complies with the state building code, okay. But that, you can't build it unless it complies with the state building code. So to me, that should just leave. I think it's going to add to confusion. And also you're trying to empower someone with a power that he has no obligation under the fire code or the building code to approve.
So leave 11 in, just change it.
No, that's, well,
Or
you can,
say excise it totally.
you could either take it away. If you want to be able to go to 45 feet with a sprinkler system, just say that. And leave out who, I mean, it's a building code issue. If for some reason down the road, the laws change and somehow that gets shifted to fire services, then you don't have to come back and deal with the bylaw. If you just say where there's an approved sprinkler system. You know what I mean? Because now it doesn't matter who, technically, you know, so if it goes from the building code to the fire code, you don't have to come back here. It just, to me, it makes sense. And number 13, this one, I had some business people actually talk to me about this in the CBC zone. Where you have your frontage of 25 feet individual lot yard. And footnote 13 is about that darn landscape thing.
Yep.
That's problematic. Number one, we don't have a definition of landscape. What's a major tree? I underlined this here. Not only that, if you have a 25-foot setback and you have 3 or 4 or whatever feet of landscape, but the tree has to be at least 15 feet from the curb line, and it's required. How are you gonna do that? DPW is gonna have to go trim the trees back all the time. They'll be in the public way. You know, it's gonna interfere with parking in front of, it's just, I think that whole section just needs to be reviewed. And maybe either a more realistic thing, maybe take out major trees and put in shrubbery, whatever that may be, you know, at least it's low. And it's not gonna grow to a mass that interferes, but it's, leave it up to you guys or get rid of it. I think it's full of problems.
I think we discussed that also.
Yes, you did, we did in the
said,
past,
who-
yes.
Who's gonna go around and, tell you what you
Well,
can
to
plant?
require shrubbery, I mean, a buffer could be as easy as river rock with a split rail.
I am absolutely,
No
I
vegetation,
absolutely
you'd be a
believe you.
real nice buffer,
I got no problem.
so that,
Think of Pete Sorrentino's. It's wide open on the street. All the way to the railroad tracks to the bridge. It's like, what is, he was worried and saying, well, if I want to do something here and I have to go for a site, does that mean I have to install something and create two driveway entrances? I mean, what this has been this way since
Yeah,
the fifties or earlier. So anyway, I think that you have business owners that are a little worried. He said he was gonna go across the street, talk to Bob Dedlington. And tell him what the problem is with this, and Bob will be up in arms too. But the major tree, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's almost
It is.
like-
It's just, I find it to be problematic. In number 14. Where was 14? 14 is. Oh, in downtown DCBC zone, when you have your frontage, you have footnote 14. 10 feet, footnote 14. You go back, a coordinated landscape design for the entire property shall be reviewed by the planning board and incorporated. Isn't that already in site plan? Why are we doing that here? It's many
I
other
think-
places other than here, right?
probably both of these could get taken out of here and put in our site plan.
Sure, or yeah, modify
Or better
your
to-
land, be careful with your landscape language. But I agree with you that probably as a footnote, it's inappropriate and it's better to have it in black and white somewhere so people see it up front. So that was the other thing. The PCVC number 16 and 17 footnotes. Where are we? PCVC. Way over at the end, the 20% maximum lot coverage. This is the outlet village. They have a lot more land. They have a huge amount of land up there. Absolutely crazy amount of land. PCVC, the planned commercial village. That's the only place we got. It's the outlet village. Right? If you go over to footnote 15, again, you have your height. So let's look at that one first. Why does it say maximum building height when
It's already been established.
that's
Yeah.
when it says in the table? What are we adding? Or did you mean to say by a special permit, it's allowed to be 45 feet if it's sprinkled? I mean, I just thought you need to look at that and say, either take it out or be more specific about what you're meaning. Can you be, maybe you can be 40 feet. 40, I don't know what you're thinking. But it seems to be useless the way it is now. In number 16 and 17, maximum building footprint. And the maximum percentage of the lot that can be rendered as impervious is 60 square feet. If they covered 60 square feet of that lot up there with impervious, there's a huge amount of acreage. It would be problematic, but
Yeah.
okay. You hate to go back in time.
You can only, oh, I see, you can put 20% of the lot into buildings and no more than 50% into.
Yeah, you
buildings
you
and
have to
driveways.
be careful. Yeah, you have to be careful how much the total impervious is. And that's as opposed to just maximum building coverage in 16 and 17. Commercial building code, why do they have 18 by special permit? The special permit granting authority may allow structures to be erected that are greater than 2.5 stories and up to 40 feet in height, provided that the lot is a minimum of 1.75 acres. That was all done so that FL Roberts could put a hotel there in the floodplain area, which he shouldn't have been able to do anyway because of the other footnotes. Conflicting footnotes. But that's all that was about at the time. Should we be restricting it to 1.7? Does it matter? What other areas in that area might want to go up to 40 feet and more than 2.5 stories? Again, it's almost like you need to review that district and say, well, what else could happen there? What could they tear down and build that would be problematic if it was 40 feet instead of 35? 5 feet difference. What would be the problem Because I'm not here to tell you any
I don't,
answers.
I don't think these, well, I think there's even bigger that these conflict with when you start talking
Oh,
about.
oh, I agree, because when you go back and look at
Yeah.
special,
Cause we
so
did,
there's some
remember,
coordination of that, yeah.
remember you remember it, yes.
I was there.
You were there.
I spoke against it. Actually, I spoke against FL Roberts going to
No, no.
40 feet and 4 stories. He wanted to go
No,
4 stories.
this was after that,
Oh,
just
okay.
a couple years ago,
I don't know.
with the downtown height.
Oh, that could be across the street, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, oh, yeah. No, well, again, they couldn't do it because it was in the floodplain. Couldn't have multiple family in floodplain.
Right, right.
You
So
know,
these-
so it's
these
like,
are
this is
conflicting
awful.
everywhere. Yeah,
That's all. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I'm here to point out things I saw, and now I'll go home
Wow.
and leave it in your laps.
You were looking for this stuff, it's kind of a comment.
Well, that's why
That's
it
what
was
it is.
on there and I
I
figured I
mean,
wanna come
almost-
and talk about
almost. Throw out the footnotes and start over.
I know.
it. I'm not
It's
telling you
almost
what
to
to
that
do. I'm
point.
just saying there's some issues
But
with,
these are, I mean, these are a section that we never
We
really,
never.
never really
nobody
looked at.
ever
Long
did.
time
Nobody
ago.
ever did, you know, and all the different changes that we've made over time.
Yeah.
So somebody thought it was a great idea at one moment in time, but unfortunately, we aren't stagnant. You know, we're moving forward, and as you talk about the master plan, it's a living thing. We have to
Oh.
change with the time and technology and everything else.
Well, I don't know if I can think with when the master plan comes out and they talk about housing, we're gonna be
Yeah,
re-looking at a lot of these densities and.
I think you
and
have
all
to.
that.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Cause when you look at, a multifamily and the acreage that.
Yeah.
it requires you to take up, it just
Yeah.
is not.
Gordon, I don't want to put you on the spot, but as a
Problem.
person with a lot of historical knowledge about how we got here. My first perception of our rules about multifamily housing was that it was very strict.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wonder, can you tell me what people were thinking 52 years ago when they did this or
I-
whenever they did it?
Yeah, I probably can't go back to 1972 and tell you about that, because I didn't get involved until 1985, around then with zoning in general. Because Mead wanted to put a dump up on Fairview Street in a residential, that's when I got involved in community action. Yeah. And started dealing with that and got an associate's, I was an associate to the planning board. Or elected for over 8 years between the two, just, you know, looking.
So, but really what I'm wondering is, was there some sort of political or sentimental motivation that you think still survives that we should be aware of?
No, I don't.
In talking about this
Yeah.
topic.
I think what you're gonna find is, you could also reach out to the brand new executive, Office of Housing Development, EOHD. Actually, I actually introduced myself and was talking to the, executive secretary. He came to a thing in Lenox a couple weekends ago that, Senator Mark had, to speak briefly about housing. You've got some changes coming that are gonna kill some of our bylaws that we just passed anyway. It's gonna throw them out, like the ADU. They want it mandatory by right, every district. I mean, this is all being formulated now, and it's gonna go through as a law. So if you want to get involved, you could reach out to that executive secretariat for any kind of heads up, or go to their website. They may even have some potential language on there. This Saturday, I'm going to an MMA thing in Northampton, Hotel Northampton, from 8:30 to noon. And I think he's also going to be there to talk. So I may approach him again and just talk about what's available for us to look at if we're doing planning.
So,
And, you know,
do
yeah.
you think this is gonna be a law, Gordon? Or,
Oh, I think probably they're doing a 5-year study
okay,
on not the ADU thing,
no,
but
but
on other
just in general.
things. Which is going to also, I believe, address certain issues around, short-term rentals. I mean, I'm just saying that at some point, we're probably gonna have to amend everything again, but we have it in place now.
Right.
We have whatever we have in place is ours, and we own it. In fact, maybe if they got a copy of ours, they might even like some of it, you know, realistically, I think you folks did a fine job.
I think to Peter's question,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of these older stuff, all I can remember Aldo.
Oh, God,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
Yeah,
And he,
yeah.
you know, and I really think they were
Mhm.
fearful of tenement houses.
There you go. And I was
stuff
gonna,
like that. And
There's a lot of chapter 8 or title 8
Yeah,
or something like that.
yeah,
that's going
yeah,
Very
yeah.
fast.
section 8.
Lots of section 8,
Section
a
8.
lot of federal money.
Still.
People were reacting.
Right,
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
tenement houses, they didn't want the projects.
Well, it's just like the 40B stuff where you can waive almost everything in your bylaw.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yep.
Just everything. Go to the ZBA, bypass planning board, site
Everything.
plan review. And I was on a committee back again, late 80s, early 90s. It was called the HOP program, Housing Opportunity Partnership. And that subcommittee, we were with the people with bankers and others anyway, we actually got to preview 40B things to sort of give them community input before they went to the ZBA
Mhm.
to try and do this. So it was an interesting thing to be part of as we were
Mhm.
looking at it. But in the reading I've done, to go more specifically to you, if you do a lot of history, reading about the history of zoning in general, most of it came out of New Jersey early on. And a lot of it was
In Ohio.
considered to be, yes, and a lot of it was considered to be racially trying to profile and keep people, especially African American, out of certain areas of
Mhm.
communities.
Oh.
So you said, so you couldn't have tenement housings, you couldn't have this, you had the suburbs where the acreage was big, at that time, maybe they
Yeah.
couldn't afford things. So they were stuck with public housing in downtowns and, so a lot of it actually came down to that. It was just people, racially profiling, like the banks and the red areas that they had.
Redlining.
Yeah, redlining they had in Pittsfield.
Right.
Well, we kind of have it here too in some ways,
Well,
without
look at-
calling it
Look
that.
at the pushback, just trying to do affordable housing, the pushback.
Well,
we get.
people don't understand that affordable housing doesn't mean Section 8 housing.
They really don't.
They have, because somebody, I won't say who said this, but one of our business owners on Main Street said that particular owner was against the Eagle Mill project because they're gonna have, Section 8 housing. It's like, no, it's affordable housing and middle income, and worker housing. That's different than Section 8 housing.
Mhm.
And you really can't profile them out anyway, in theory.
No.
But again, that's another way to profile, and it's really about being prejudiced about whether it's not necessarily race, but it's economic
Economic
status.
level, yeah.
So there's a lot of people need help at first when they're young or whatever, they get laid off, they're sick.
I know.
So you know what?
Mm.
It's not a disgrace.
We have a giant section of town that it's 3 acres to build.
And
Yeah,
that's
and
needs to be looked at. Why? And it's so.
It's like, remember Richmond did
Yeah.
5 acres.
Yeah.
That was just
Some
total
places.
snob zoning.
Absolutely.
It looked like.
Yeah. Well, here we had, when the Board of Selectmen went up to meet with the school kids, I don't know if you knew we did this, but we got letters from the 8th grade civics classes, 2 of them. And I suggested, why don't we go up and have a meeting at the school with each class? So we did. Sean unfortunately wasn't able to be there, but I wanted to do this 10 years, 12,
That's
14
good.
years ago. So we finally did it. And one kid had a great question. He said he lives in a certain location down on Pine or West Pine or whatever. And I think it happens to be in the CR zone, but this thing's forever old and I think they have a half-acre lot. And their neighbor wanted to buy like a 10-foot path with a bunch of trees on it, just 10 feet. And he said, my family could really use it economically. Why can't we do this? He thought he could come to you guys for a special permit. And I had to tell him, no, you really can't, there's no way in that, because I looked at the dimensional requirements, you really can't do it that way. And so I'm looking and going, well, why do we have a CR zone?
Mhm.
Other than to keep woods, to keep it green.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what our CR zone's about. If you look at where CR zone, that overlook the Tyrian Valley, that kind of thing, where you have so, they're not gonna, we also have bylaws in place where you can't build above a certain height. So you're gonna keep your major tree lines at the top. So what if somebody wants to put a driveway up and clear a half-acre lot, maybe on the side of a hill? And you have the whole rest of the, an acreage. But right now, if you own a 3-acre lot, you can pretty much strip it clean.
Yes,
So I think it's the wrong way to try and handle
Yeah.
keeping greenery is just by making huge lots with huge frontages.
and then you just have but you have a house every 3 acres.
Yeah, exactly. So
Now,
And it can't be used for forestry, and it can't be
No.
used for farming, and it
not really. It's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, well, if you have more than 5 acres,
But,
you can't stop it. But if it's primarily agriculture, but if you have your house as your primary, you can't use that loophole. There's a different loophole you use.
Hmm.
There's always one, Peter, you know, there's always one.
Everywhere.
but what's
So it's
the,
just not that one.
the whole, we have the development section too that.
Yeah.
Forget what it's called.
I
But
know.
it's
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
it's a
Cluster
cluster
development,
development, yeah, which is a good concept.
right,
it's
and
a
it's
little-
really about
it
taking
was-
all this land and
Were-
Right.
highly density,
Yeah.
having high
Right.
density.
Were you in on that? Or
I
that
was not
Mark?
on the board when that went
It
through.
was Mark, right?
Yeah, Martin Daly.
That was it.
Yeah. And you know,
We
it's,
never
Something
got one.
like that.
It is, we do have,
We
Where?
do have. two.
it's, oh, no, there's never been an application.
No.
Yeah.
Good idea that never
But
got
it's a
used.
good idea, though.
well, I was thinking, what about the Graylock Mill people
Oh,
with the
gosh.
35 acres next to it?
Oh.
Exactly.
You know, that would be a great area to do it and to, as a
I
starter
agree.
program,
Some
see
people
how
are
it's gonna
talking about
work.
that. Some people are talking. about
Yeah, I
it.
know. Well, I know,
Without getting too far
I'm not gonna
off
go
of
there.
our agenda item, but yes.
Yeah, well, again, you know, I can't go there, but as far as the footnotes to the table,
Yes.
there's nothing in the footnotes about cluster development.
No,
You know, sending, oh, well, you can have more if you go to cluster development, you know what I mean? So maybe you want to steer people partially that way, but I don't know. Well, anyway, those were my comments about your dimensional requirements.
Hmm.
Thanks, Gordon.
thank you.
Thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem.
Be careful.
And I'm gonna go away.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably something we'll start working on. Like,
Next.
Soon,
next town
next-
In a
meeting.
while.
yeah, for the
Couple
next
weeks.
town meeting.
And by the way, is this the last regular planning board meeting before somebody goes
Yeah.
away?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as a person who watches from home, I say thank you for your time and for your good minutes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Even though they don't share them with me, but I do get them.
She's going to live with the grizzly bears.
I
I
know.
don't know
Yeah.
why. We really don't know, why. And the owls, owls and grizzly bears, right?
Well, you
Wow.
know, we used to, the board of
Right.
selectmen used to get all the minutes from every board sent to us.
We all did it.
Yeah, and now I don't get them anymore.
That's too bad.
Unless I ask for them.
They're on our website.
Yeah, well,
I
that's,
promise I
that's
can
good.
update.
It's good for people who like to live on their phones. I don't.
That could,
Wow.
Anyway,
I can send you all the.
you,
oh,
do,
no, you can, but now you're gone.
I know.
On Friday.
Oh, okay, well, you're not.
It's, it's a
Okay.
good thing she's still here,
Yeah,
because I wasn't taking notes, but I know she did.
yeah, all the things I said, and I went fast, and I apologize for the phone too.
Got it.
So, anyway, thank you very much for what all you guys do, all right?
okay,
See
thank you, Gordon.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, I think that gives us, yeah, and I don't. It's almost like we might have to
Start off.
start all over with these footnotes.
Well, you know, I mean, the master plan is coming shortly, I'll tell you in a
just-
minute, but, I think we might want to start large rather than start with the footnotes.
Exactly, yes,
And just start conceptually of what do we think the town's going to look like in 20 years?
yep,
And how much more housing do we want to have? Where do we want the commerce to be? And how do we want it to look? And
we might be rewriting all the
we
dimensional
might, yeah, I
requirements
mean, we
and
might
everything.
be
Oh my
reducing
God.
the lot sizes generally. We might be allowing more multifamily. I hope we do, and without as much restriction as there is now. I hope we get some more housing, but you know, it's not just Lee, but there's a national housing crisis.
There is,
Well, you said, look at the history, where this started, 1972, and what was the rationale back then for doing this?
Right.
It-
It's different today.
if you look,
Right.
a lot of our bylaws are very protectionist.
Mhm.
You know, when, even like where you could put the restaurants, where you know, they couldn't go in the redevelopment.
Yeah.
And that was because along Main Street had a lot of influence when the bylaws were written. They said, no, we don't want that
But
competition,
now you want little clusters of
Yeah.
places that people can walk to from their
you
apartment.
know, and.
Yeah.
And just, and businesses have discovered that, yes, you can put a Lowe's and a Home Depot across the street from each other and
Oh, yeah.
they thrive off each other.
Mhm.
I hope we find out, which direction we're gonna do with the planner before we get into these things, that's all.
That's, I think that might be
It's gonna be a vote, right? We're gonna, it's either up or down at town meeting.
right.
Well, I think money wise, we're just
Yeah.
filling the position.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm assuming we'll get
understand
somebody
we have-
qualified.
we have corrections to make. But if we have nobody to deal with the corrections we've made. We're just.
Well, I'm hoping it passes. I don't
I
know.
think, you know what?
The master plan is assuming a lot of things
Peter,
that person's gonna do a lot of things in the next 5 years.
and with that, I think, yeah, Peter's right. Instead of us going through and fixing these little mistakes, probably look at, once the master plan comes out, we, evaluate that and do it bigger. Most of this stuff will be
CJ
irrelevant.
told the master plan committee that they had done something conceptually different from our zoning in Pittsfield. And he had a phrase for, what was the phrase for it again, bro? It was like functional zoning or something. It was
He
like,
did. I thought that was very interesting.
and I don't really understand how it works, but I think we should look at it, you know, at least a little bit. See if we want to just go to a whole different kind of structure. And then all these little complications will disappear and a whole new set of complications, and inconsistencies will
The
appear
new
in the new
set,
draft.
right?
You gotta sell it at town meeting.
You do what?
You'd have to sell it at
Yeah.
town meeting when this is all done.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, my sense of the town is that politically, I think people are ready to have more housing, somewhat more density. And I think we're somewhat divided about how much visual change we want. I think there are people who say, I don't want, you know, I want it to be a small town, but I want my kids to have a place to live. Well, you can't have both of those things, sorry. We gotta make some changes, but hopefully we can find a way to do it that doesn't scare
It's
people.
50 years later.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It is.
And there's a lot more people in the country. 50 years ago, what was the population of the United States? 250 million? Now it's 350, 380 million. We kept having kids and people kept coming in and we
Hmm.
haven't been building a lot of new houses.
No.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you all. That's really good input. Next up, CPA, Peg? Anything new? Great.
No, I think that the town meeting is gonna be the next thing.
Okay. Peter, master
So
plan?
a meeting is scheduled for next Monday night. It's the first meeting after the public forum, which most of you attended, I think. We have tabulated a grand total of 83 comments
Oh,
to respond to. Some of them are easy, you know, cross references are wrong and that can be fixed by the staff without any controversy. Some of them are very substantive and, you know, want us to add new action items. And so we're gonna have a meeting from 7 to 9, I guess. 6:30 to 9 next Monday, 2.5 hours. And I'm hopeful that we can finish the business, go through all of the 83 that haven't been decided by staff as easy, discuss the most important ones and agree to disband the committee and submit the plan to this board. I'm hopeful. But honestly, I think it's not a certainty. There were at least 20 things that people might want to talk about that were suggested. And I'm hoping that not all of them have advocates on the committee when we get to meet and that we can do, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 and then adjourn the meeting. But we might have to do 20. And if we have to do 20, there'll be still another meeting, I'm afraid. So,
Gotcha.
but you'll get it soon. I've been saying
Sounds
that for a
good.
while. We still have staff. They haven't quit yet up there. They're way past budget, I can tell you that.
Hey, Brooke will be there Monday.
No,
Yeah.
she's done this week.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any topic? I think the topic would be Brooke.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you. It was, to have somebody come in and just fill in like this and with your ability was so good. I mean, really well. I mean, we've had people fill in people and It's been a disaster. You actually brought it to a new level. You helped us out. We think I speak for everyone. Wish you good luck with the owls.
I will.
Yes.
Good.
Say, where did you think?
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else?
Great.
One more?
Move to adjourn.
So move. All in
Alright.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.